Hello, Yu-Gi-Oh players, and welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! Business Casual. I'm your host, the RJB0, and it's my favorite time of year again. It is time for my logical format video series. That means that I get to show off my nerdery for economics and math and Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff like that without everybody falling asleep. So that's pretty great for me. But what's great for you guys is you guys get to check out a ban list prediction that is set entirely by logic and economics and knowledge of how business works, and not by butthurt about certain decks. So everybody wins in this case. For those of you who do not know what this thing is that I do, although I'm sure like a third of my subscribers are here because of this video series, um, is basically I produce an economist style kind of spreadsheet set of rules and prediction kind of calculations that help me to decide what would be the most economically smart move for Konami to make when it comes to the ban list. And seeing as Konami is a business, that makes kind of the most sense. Um, so I guess I should get started. So the first thing that I usually do when I go into this is I set off with a set of assumptions that I need to go into about Konami, or a set of things that I need to know about Konami before I can start making predictions. And those things are, first, the most important one is Konami will always be, and has always been, a business. They are there to make money, and that is what they do with these formats. They do them in order to make sure that they can continue selling product at a profitable rate in the near future. So that's one thing we definitely need to remember above all else. It also helps us to be objective and not to start screaming about cards that we just don't like getting banned. Because little as I like it, I don't think Avarice is going to get hit. So that makes me kind of sad. Anyway, next thing. The second thing we know about Konami is they have a much better understanding of their plans for the near future than any of the players do. So there are things that they do that kind of come out of left field. Even if you feel like you've made the best predictions in the world, they'll probably come out with a good number of things that we didn't see coming. So my goal usually is to get as close as I can as possible, but I, to this day, have not gotten even nearly everything correct. Um, so the next thing we need to know about Konami is, since 2009, and I'm going to move over to this ban list. Yes, I made a spreadsheet of the ban list since 2009. Since 2009, there's only been one time that they had a category in the list completely blank. And that was in March of 2010. They didn't ban anything. You'll see these zeros on the left over here. That says that there wasn't anything that got hit in that list or put in the list. Over here, we have some zeros, but that was because those were formats where they didn't bring anything back from the ban list, which is actually pretty common, as you can see. And I'll talk about that in one of my other videos. But for now, this video is mostly about OCG and analysis, and I'll get to that in a second. The next thing that we need to know about Konami when it comes to ban lists is they have an order of things that they tend to hit first. The first thing that they will hit is something that creates a loop or an expanded play or enables OTKs. These are things like, as you can see, Zen Mighty enabled the wind-up loop. Bryonic enabled crazy numbers of loops. Future Fusion enabled expanded plays and OTKs. Um, Things like Mind Master, Fishborg Blaster, Mass Drive, um, things like that. Those are the first things that Konami tends to hit if there's a big loop in the game. And of course, One Day of Peace also enabled some big loops. Those will be the first things that they hit. Inevitably, it doesn't matter what deck is winning the most right now. If there's something that creates a loop or expanded play or OTK, that's usually the first thing that they go for. The next thing that they go for has a little bit more to do with specific decks. The next thing they'll always go for is searchers. You see this with things like, actually, the first thing that goes is special summons from the deck. Things like Wind Up Magician, Zen Mighty, uh, what's it called, Dragonfly, stuff like that. Those are the first things that go. If there's something that can special summon from the deck at little to no cost, then they are definitely going to hit that for a specific top tier deck. And then the next thing is searchers and then draw power. And the last thing that they ever hit seems to be boss monsters. If they can avoid hitting boss monsters, they usually do. So it goes loop slash OTK, then special summon from the deck for, top tier decks, and then draw power for top tier decks, and search power for top tier decks, and then boss monsters. So those are the kinds of things that they usually hit. The other things that they hit, the things that tend to come at kind of out of left field, are the things that are going to be harmful to decks in the future. Things like Thunder King Ryo, Solemn Warning, like they did in the March 2013 format. But really, the most predictable things are the things that have to do with specific decks. So the next thing I'm going to go on to is the thing that was on the starting screen. Now this is the most important thing about my analysis. This is my OCG analysis. Now this is actually kind of a little bit obsessive in the way that I create it. I actually created it on a point system, and the way the point system works is I open Shriek, and I use Shriek to open up every OCG tournament that has 60 or more participants and is neither a team event or a special event. Team events are really popular in Japan. I think it's something that we should do more of in the TCG, but that's something for another video. And they have special events, like Highlander formats and stuff like that. Anything that isn't a special event or a team event and has 60 or more players. Then what I do is for each deck, I tally up the number of first place finishes they have, second place finishes, and third place finishes. And for each first place, that deck gets 3 points. For second place, it's 2 points. For third place, it's 1. So what you get out of this for this format is something very interesting. We have dragons with 178 points. That is a lot. To give you a comparison, windups were the best deck last format. They only got 90 points. You can see that right up here. But dragons got 178, and the only one anywhere near it, and it isn't even that much, it's less than half the points that they got, is spellbooks. In comparison, Mermail got 89 and Rabbit got 58, 58 being only about 30 underneath windups, whereas dragons are over 100 more than spellbooks. So dragons are clearly the tier 0 in Japan, with spellbooks as kind of a rogue second. And then our third place is mermails. I think it's important to point out mermails because they were dominating the TCG in the early part of the format, and if Konami wasn't to hit them, they would come out swinging in the fall format. So it's important to mention them. Then comes Evil Swarms at 14. I think the Evil Swarms are actually going to get off scot-free, and the reason is they aren't doing so hot this format, where they have 2 decks that they do really well against because of Ophion, which allows an Eradicator plays. It also stops dragons. So I don't think that they're going to feel like Evil Swarms even need to get hit because their best monster isn't particularly useful against any formats besides this one. And I know that I'm probably going to get some hate for that, but it's pretty obvious based on the scores that Evil Swarms just haven't been up to snuff recently. And then you have other decks, which were the kind of rogue decks that each one of them got under 10 points. They got 14 points total. So that is my OCG breakdown. I think it's just kind of important to point out because it shows you, it allows me to put into perspective what they're most likely to hit the most, and it shows you what the OCG looks like from an objective and empirical point of view. It may be not the best example of how to live your life productively, but it works out for this purpose. So now I'm actually going to get on to talking about the cards that are going to get in. I'm just going to talk about the top 3 decks in the OCG for this video, because those are the ones that are most likely to get hit, and they're also the easiest to predict. So let's start with dragons, of course, the tier 0 for this format. Once again, we know that Konami starts with loops and OTK enablers. Do dragons have any of those? Not really. One other thing that we know about Konami is they don't like adding things to the list if they can. If they can hit something enough by moving something down the list a little bit farther than they usually do. Dragons don't have anything that's limited or semi-limited that really gives them any power. They also do not have anything that produces any kind of loop plays, so it doesn't make sense to go for those. Next, we have searchers and draw power. Dragons actually have two of those, and those are probably the most important cards to Dragons. Now, one of the things that's really important to point out is the fact that Konami really doesn't have a whole lot of motivation to hit the Dragons themselves. What they really want to get rid of is that mono Dragon build, that build that's based around, using just the Dragons in order to get rank 7 exceeds it out, etc. Because A, they're going to be making money off of Dragons come the fall. B, besides just that revenue from Lord of Tachyon Galaxy left to make in those tins, there's the fact that they're actually, Dragons enable some decks that Konami is really going to want to sell. So the Dragons themselves are unlikely to get hit, they just really want to get rid of that mono build. And the two cards that really enable that mono build the most are Gold Sarcophagus and Super Rejuvenation. Now it makes sense. Not only is Super Rejuvenation broke as dicks, but it makes sense that Konami would hit it, since they tend to go for big draw power and big search power, which makes sense for both Sarco and a Rejuve. Now, I think out of all of the cards that it's possible that Konami is going to hit, I think Rejuve is the best candidate for getting banned. Since, like I showed you guys before, it's been since 2010, early 2010, they didn't ban something, and I think it's highly likely that they're going to. So if they ban anything, I think it's going to be Super Rejuvenation, because it is the thing that above all the other cards, enables that mono dragon build, and that's something they really want to make sure it goes away, because it hurts their profits on other decks more than pretty much anything else. And then Sarco, because it's easy search power, it works best for that deck. It doesn't help out a whole lot of other decks, so they don't feel bad about hitting it. It doesn't reduce their profits if they hit Sarco or Rejuve, so it makes sense. So I think it's about an 80% chance that Rejuve gets banned, and any other part of that chance is it just gets limited. I don't think Rejuve is going to be left unhit. And then Sarco, I'm pretty sure it's about a 70% chance that that's going to get limited. Now, the other things I'd like to kind of speculate on for a second with Dragons is first, Big Eye. One thing I've been noticing is it kind of would make sense for Konami to hit Big Eye, because they want to hit those Xyz plays that you can make with Dragons. They also want to make sure that Mermails don't have more power than, they can possibly leave them with. And I think that hitting Big Eye would be alright. Dragasack doesn't make sense, because they're actually going to be trying to promote more of the Phantom Beastcraft cards in the future, and Dragasack is actually completely essential to that deck. So if they're going to be trying to promote that deck, it doesn't make sense for them to hit Dragasack, but it does make a degree of sense for them to hit Big Eye. I think limiting Big Eye to 1 would not hurt profits they would make off of a potential reprint, especially if it's in one of these tins coming up, because all of the other reprints may make it worth it already. So the Big Eye, it would still be a good card at once. It would also still make them profits on its own based off of those tins, but I really think that it wouldn't lose them any profits to hit Big Eye to 1. I don't think it's extremely likely that it's going to happen, just because there's a degree of lack of motivation for it, but it also helps to dampen those dragons. And as we've noticed in the past, they do kind of like to go overkill when it comes to taking down basically tier 0, tier 1 decks that aren't going to be making them into any profits in the future. Note windups from last format. So, and the other thing I'd like to say is, if it comes to limiting any of the dragons themselves at all, a lot of people have been saying Blaster, but if they went for any of the dragons, I'd say Tidal. Now, hear me out on this. They need to find ways of hitting Mermails without looking like they're trying to drive them into the ground. I think that if they hit any of them, it would be Tidal, because that brings down Tidal Mermails, and it also helps to reduce the power of that mono dragon build. I don't think Blaster would get hit, if not because it doesn't enable any of the other decks that were big in this format, because it also actually helps out 3-Axis, which is a deck they're going to be making tons of money off of in the near future. So I do not think Blaster will get hit. Tidal, I think if any of the dragons get hit, it'll be that one, but I think that's also highly unlikely. So I'd say that the two most likely things to get hit out of dragons are Sarco and Rejuve. Sarco to 1, Rejuve to none. Then spellbooks. Spellbooks are the next thing. They're not nearly as bad for the format in Japan as dragons are, but they are still pretty big, and they're making a big splash in the TCG, which is still pretty important to them for the sake of profit. So the things that are kind of on the chopping block, as far as people have seen, and in my opinion as well, are Spellbook of Judgment, obviously, Spellbook of Secrets, once again the search power, and then Spellbook Star Hall. This is an interesting one that I thought of while I was watching a few videos. I think it was one by like Yu-Gi-Oh! Bros or something that really brought it up for me. But I'll get to that in a second. Now, I don't actually think they're going to hit Judgment, and let me tell you why. While Judgment does create really nasty loop-like plays, it is really only useful when you have secrets. And I think secrets is the search power that really enables the deck um, for the most part. With secrets in the game, at 3, um, I think that as long as that is around, judgment plays are still going to be really good. If you only have 1 secret, it doesn't really make sense to have that judgment at 3 in a deck. So it wouldn't make sense for them to try and even hit it if they hit secrets to 1, which I think is extremely likely. I think the Spellbook of Secrets is probably the most likely card in spellbooks to get hit. The other thing is Star Hall. Now, the reason why Star Hall may get hit is because it allows Prophecy players to only run those really small monsters like Kaiku and Jougen, not actually run any of the real Prophecy monsters besides Magician. Now, the only card from Prophecy that Konami is going to be trying to promote is the World of Prophecy. Now, the World is a huge monster and doesn't actually benefit that much from Star Hall. So it would make sense for them to push players toward using a more Reaper Stun style build, which once again is enabled by Spellbook of Judgment, or a build based entirely around the world. That's something they're going to want to keep Judgment around for, but they can't have the deck going at its current state. So I think Secrets is very likely to get hit, and Star Hall is definitely a runner-up. Then finally, I want to talk a little bit about Mermails, because I think that they have to get hit, otherwise Konami is going to be dealing with a deck that is going to be extremely counter-profit to them. So Mermails, I think the 3 things that are on the chopping block are Dragoons, Megalo, and Sphere. I think Dragoons is the most likely one, simply because, once again, it's their main search power. Dragoons enables pretty much the majority of their plays, since it can get any of the boss monsters for Mermails, and it's very easy for them to use. So it makes sense for them to hit Dragoons. If they hit Dragoons, it's probably going to be to 1, and I think that's the most likely thing. I'd say about a 60% chance, with a 30% chance they hit Megalo, because it's both a boss monster and its search power, and then 10% to Spheres. The reason why Sphere is because it's, once again, that card that special summons from the deck. I think that since most players only run like 1 or 2, it would only make sense for Konami to hit Sphere if they ban it, which it is not broken enough for them to justify banning it. So I think it's highly unlikely that Sphere gets hit, but of the cards from Mermails, those are the 3 most likely to get hit. So in conclusion, I think that Dragons, Spellbooks, and Mermails are the 3 decks that are most likely to get hit. Dragons are going to lose something from Sarco and Rejuve, and then Spellbooks, most likely Secrets and Star Hall, possibly Judgment, but I don't think so. Mermail, I definitely think Dragoons is going down, with a significant possibility that they'll lose Megalo, and then Sphere is an extremely minor possibility. So thank you guys for watching. I tried to make this a little shorter than my last one, but I will just finish up the outro, and I'll see you guys later. So thank you for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. I hope you liked the video. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why. And hit that comment section to talk to me about certain points that I missed or things you want to bring up, because I will mention you and your point in the next video and discuss it if I think that it's a valid point. And then subscribe for more Yu-Gi-Oh! Videos. Thanks for watching Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual, guys. I got a jet. Bye.